Hello, welcome to our St. Paul Learn with the League. For this month's program, we are featuring our Youth Vote Student Leader program and projects. I am Heidi Klumpkin, co-president of the League of Women Voters St. Paul. For over 100 years, the League of Women Voters has worked as a citizens league to improve our government and engage all citizens in the decisions that impact their lives. We join the efforts of 800 state and local leagues to bring nonpartisan political advocacy, education, and empowerment to the local level. Check out our website to learn more about membership in the League of Women Voters. Tonight, our program is supported by the Suburban Community Channels and St. Paul Neighborhood Network. Thank you so much for sharing our information. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are learning today on the ancestral homeland of the Dakota, Minnesota, and the current home of many Native nations, including many Dakota and Ojibwe. The program tonight is being recorded and broadcast on Facebook Live. Towards the end of the program, our panelists will take questions from the audience. Please use the Zoom Q&A bubble at the bottom of the screen to submit a question. If you are watching on Facebook Live, please put your question in the comment section and we will have that shared with our panelists. Also, we are using Zoom closed caption feature. They are auto-generated, so they might not be exact. For the last 4 years, the League of Women Voters St. Paul Youth Vote Committee has been working to register and educate our youngest voters. After a busy election season, the program committee wanted to make sure some background on the program and wanted to share some background about the Youth Vote program and feature some student projects from past years and this year. I'll take a minute to introduce our panelists for tonight's program and then hand it over to Dan to share some information. Our first panelist is Dan Krivit, a former chair of the Youth Vote Committee. When he took over with inspiration from past leaders and other civic organizations, he started the Student Leader program. In a bit, he'll share more about the program and how it's developed over time. Our second panelist is Lia Pak, current co-chair of the Youth Vote Committee with Grace Reardon. Lia is a student at Macalester College and majoring in political science and biology. She and Grace have worked with Dan in the past and are continuing the Student Leader program with great success. Our third panelist is student leader Panra Lee from Como Park High School. Panra is currently a senior, and this is her first year as a student leader, and we are very happy to have her here tonight sharing about her project. With that, I'd love to pass it over to Dan. Dan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm excited to hear about the program.
Thanks, Heidi. My name's Dan, and I'm just grateful to be a part of this program tonight. And I'm especially proud to showcase some of the fantastic work of our just stellar student leaders. So the next slide shows you why I'm so passionate. It's just a snapshot of some of the statistics. These are national numbers from the presidential election cycle. In St. Paul, we have elections every year, but every 4 years, the presidential election is tallied by CIRCLE, which is the Center for Information Research and Center for Civic Learning and Engagement, CIRCLE for short. So they are showing that in 2016, 39% of the youth turned out and 50% in the 2020 election just a year ago. So that's just part of the reason that I'm so passionate about the work that we do. And I think that we've had a small part in this here in St. Paul. So next slide. So the older history of the Youth Vote program is that we used to have our adult League of Women Voters of St. Paul volunteers do the classroom presentations. We've always partnered with the Minnesota Secretary of State and the Ramsey County, especially their student election judge program. But through some planning work and with coordination with the St. Paul Public Schools, we changed the program to be student-led in terms of the presentations in the classrooms. And one of the conclusions we came to is that we really need to work both on voter registration of students in the high schools and in college, but also work on other forms of civic engagement. When we're in the classroom, we know that not all of the students are eligible, and we need to engage all students when we're in the high schools. So with that, the next slide begins to show some of the other details. We got support from Rob Schumer, many volunteers in the youth vote team, as it was called then. And here's some of the statistics. Okay. We got grants from the League of Women Voters Minnesota and Ramsey County. And in 2020, we also worked on the census grant program. And we'll hear one student leader on that later in the program tonight. But we also worked, of course, on the election in terms of youth voter registration and civic engagement. So the next slide shows just some of the statistics on why we're so proud of the work we do. This is from the spring of 2018 through the fall of 2020. And you can see that we've had a large number, 48 in that time frame, student leaders, 38 of which returned for a second semester. So that 79% retention rate really does speak to our the excitement that the students have about returning to this program. Over 200 presentations, we estimate roughly 4,000 contacts through the classrooms and other means, including social media, and we figure about 500 voter registrations. So this is just really cool work. So next slide. We're going to start showing some of the student projects now, and this was a poster by Chitra Zhang in Como Park High School in the fall of 2020. And the next slide is actually this poster was used in an announcement by our lead teacher, Mr. Eric Erickson, on May 27, 2020. And this is just the excerpt related to civic engagement at Como. Now, I can't hear it. I'll type to our panelists. I can't hear the video either, so we're having a little technical difficulty. So
as soon as possible.
there we go.
Did you know that 4 Como senior leaders have been working on a voter outreach program with the League of Women Voters this spring? Here's a message from them. Dear Como students, it is important to participate in political advocacy. It can influence those who are representing you in making those policies. For those who are eligible to vote, over 18 years old now or will be 18 soon, please register. Super easy to do. Just go to mnvotes.org. That's mnvotes.org.
So the next one is also by a student leader. And this is from Anas in August on the census.
Hi, my name is Anas and I want to talk to you about the census and how important it is for your community's future. Every 10 years, the census head counts everyone in the United States. It looks at where the populations are rising and where they're not rising. And this information is used to see which places need more resources, such as more hospitals and more schools. And if your community is undercounted, it won't get its fair share of these resources, which makes filling out the census something that is very important. However, not a lot of minority groups and immigrant families fill out the census, either because they think they will be questioned if they are a citizen or not, or the information they're giving away could be used against them. The first thing is, the census will not ask you if you are a citizen or not. And number two, the census is required by law not to give away any individual information that could be used to identify someone or a business, even to law enforcement agencies. Filling out the census is something that is very easy and anyone can do it for their family or for themselves. You can fill out the census either by mail, which you will receive if you haven't already, or by online. You can go to 2020census.gov to find out more.
So in summary, the census is something that head counts everybody in the United States every 10 years. and it uses the information to see which communities need more resources, such as hospitals and schools and more. For example, if a community is having more children, then it is clear that it needs more schools in the next 10 years, right? And the next thing is it keeps your personal information secure and confidential so that it never shares information that could be used against you or information that could be used to identify you. It cannot share with anybody, including law enforcement agencies. And last but not least, you can fill it out by mail, which you will get, or by online. And to fill it out online, you can go to 2020census.gov. Okay? Thank you very much.
So that's just,
Hi, my name is Anas, and I want to talk to you about the census.
we're very proud of Anas. He not only did the census work in the summer of 2020, came back in the fall, did election work on voter registration, and Leah's going to introduce him in a moment in terms of the work that he did this fall as well. So, and he did it in 2 languages as well, in English, as you saw, as well as in his native Somali language. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Lia Pak, who's our co-chair of the Youth Vote Committee. So
Thank you
thanks,
so
Leah.
much, Dan. It was really great to hear about that. And remember, if you have questions for Dan, please feel free to add them to the chat and we'll be able to ask them after we hear from our panelists. Thanks, Dan. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that Ramsey County census work that they did. So if you can share that later too. And Leah is here, as you heard earlier. Leah and Grace are the co-chairs of the Youth Vote Committee, and they are leading the Student Leader program. And Leah is here to share some information about how the program went in fall 2020. Welcome, Leah.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm looking forward to getting to talk about a lot of the cool work that our students have done. Just for a little background, I started working with the Youth Vote team in Dan in fall of last year, 2020. I'm a student at Macalester College, and then kept staying engaged. And then in February and March of 2021, Grace and I took over from Dan and are the current co-chairs. So we have had 1 season under our belt, and we're looking forward to continuing in the future. So if we go to the next slide, you can see some of the numbers from this year's student program. We had 7 student leaders overall across 3 different high schools. We're pretty excited to get this many in just a local election year. We found that a lot of, just as you experience in all aspects of the political landscape, the local elections were getting less engagement from the students. So we were really happy to have 7 super engaged students who are happy to work with us and make projects. So at these schools, all of the students made their own projects focused on voter registration and voter education, and spread them at their high schools to their peers, talking about a lot of those ideas that Dan mentioned earlier that have been important to this program about getting involved in politics. And so if we go to the next slide, we can actually see some of these presentations. So this is a couple slides from a presentation, just a screenshots from them that was made by 2 students at Central High School this year, Nora Fairbanks and Iris Steiner Manning. Nora was a student leader with us last year. So as Dan mentioned, it's been really great to see a lot of student leaders come back to the program and continue working with us for multiple sessions of it. It's really fun to get to see them grow and also stay engaged. And then Iris was a new student who Nora was able to help bring in. So that's also fun, getting to kind of see the transfer of knowledge and passion throughout the different grade levels and everything. So they made this presentation, and it covered a wide range of voting topics relevant for this election season, including what's on the ballot, as you can see. And then they went through and talked about the different candidates in the neutral, nonpartisan manner of the league. And they also discussed ranked choice voting and school board, why they're passionate about these topics and why they thought their peers should be as well. between Nora and Iris, they visited all of their senior government and social studies classes at Central High School. So they went in person and presented these slides. And they talked a lot about how even students who can't vote, whether because they're not eligible yet, how they can get engaged with adults in their lives and raise awareness about voting, especially in an off-year political election. And they also talked a lot to their peers about the importance of the school board election in St. Paul and how that impacts them as students in the St. Paul public school system. So was really excited to see all the work they came out with and were sharing. And then if we go to the next slide, we have another video from Anas. So like Dan mentioned, Anas has been with us for several sessions. He's been really great contributor to our program, and he made this video also about the 2021 elections. If we want to just play that now and show that cool work.
Hi there, my name is Anas, and today I want to talk to you about the upcoming 2021 elections, which will be taking place on November 2nd. You can register at the polls if you aren't already registered. That said, let's talk a bit about ranked-based voting, which is how you'll be voting. In a ranked-based election, you vote by ranking the candidates from your most favorite to least favorite. The candidate you most want will be your first choice, and then you'll have your second choice, your third choice, and so on. If more than 50% of the population, which is the majority, votes for a candidate as their first choice vote, then that candidate wins. If no candidate gets more than 50% of the first choice votes, then an instant runoff happens. In an instant runoff, the candidate with the least amount of first choice votes is defeated, and their ballots would count for the voters' second choice votes. This cycle repeats until a candidate gets more than 50% of the votes and wins. Also, this year you'll be able to vote on whether the city should adopt a residential rent stabilization ordinance. If the city adopts this ordinance, then residential landlords would only be able to raise rent at no more than 3% a year. A yes vote indicates favor of limiting rent increases, and a no vote indicates against limiting rent increases. Under this video, I've included a packet created by the League of Women Voters of St. Paul that would give you more information about the people who are running for mayor in St. Paul and what their priorities would be if they were elected. I've also included a sample ballot under this video in case you wanted to make yourself familiar with what the real ballot would look like. Again, the election day is November 2nd, and if you're not registered, you can register at the polling places. And to find a polling place, you can go to pollfinder.sos.state.mn.us, which is a link I've also included in the description of this video. You would basically enter the address of your home to find the nearest polling place you can go to vote. Thank you very much for taking the minute to watch this video. See you on election day.
Yeah, so another great video from Anas from this past election year, and he made this, put it up on YouTube, and then shared the link with teachers so they could show it in their classrooms and share it with students as well. And then if we go to the next slide,
Hi there, my name is Anas, and
we had similarly 3 students at Como High School who put together a PowerPoint and spoke to classes. This is a nice photo in action to give you a little sense of this looks like, what they're doing, even with the masks and everything. And we're really excited to get to hear from Panra Lee, our next panelist, about a little bit more about their project.
Thank you so much, Leah. It was really great to learn from you. I'm excited to hear you answer some other questions we have coming in a little bit later. And as Leah mentioned, we are here to welcome Panra Lee, a student at Como High School. I wanted to start, Panra, with a question for you before you share with us your presentation. So I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about what made you interested in becoming a League of Women Voters St. Paul student leader.
This opportunity was given to me by my history teacher, Mr. Erickson, and I know you all know him well. But as a senior, I am looking for ways to grow. And so I was interested in being a student leader, not only to learn about the organization, but also to learn what I will soon and need to know and use, and just to see what I'm capable of, and also using this as an opportunity to work on my public speaking skills as well. And a little bit about the project. I worked with 2 other Como student leaders, Chikamso Chidoki and Lucy Hebel. And so the purpose of the project is to encourage eligible voters to register and then to actually come out and vote. And in the slides, we included that they had the chance to vote in the local election that took place November 2nd. Additionally, we listed some things that all students could do to be involved and engaged in politics, so not just voting. Lucy, Chikamso, and myself presented our slides to 8 different 12th grade history classes over 2 days, spreading and sharing the knowledge that we learned on the process on how one could vote. And so in the classes, there was an estimate of about 15 students in each classroom, and approximately 20% of the students were eligible to vote. So that was pretty awesome. We also included slides to help with students navigating on where they could get either more information or links to learn about their candidates that are running in the election. And that makes it easier for students to make time to go through the steps to vote, because voting doesn't have to be hard, especially for new voters, young voters, and everyone has the right to vote. So if we go and look at the slides, everyone has the right to vote, but however, not everyone may meet the certain qualifications. And so, for example, if you are not 18 years of age yet, or do not yet have citizenship in the US, those could be obstacles, but and by sharing our information and qualifications to our peers, it helps to educate individuals on the voting process and different ways that they can implement change and make their voices heard. So if we go to the slide of advocacy, my group included ways, instead of just voting, ways that you could still make your voice heard. For example, I am not yet eligible to vote, but other ways that I could make my opinion heard or share my concerns and opinions is I could write letters to local or national representatives, testifying at meetings, or participating in protests and marches. And that being said, presenting our information to the students was the best part of my project.
Well, thank you so much for walking us through that presentation. I felt like we were in the class with you, and I need to register to vote. I do have a couple more questions for you, Panra, if you would like to answer them before we welcome back our other panelists. Being this is your first year as a student leader, do you have any tips you would like to share with future student leaders?
So my group, we did a presentation of a Google slide presentation. And well, I will have to say, now I know how the teachers feel because you're standing in front of your peers, and it's just you and your information as they are listening. So that can either make you overthink or like try to even maybe minimize the time you're using, but don't do that. What I feel like a tip is to not only share the information on the slides, but also maybe even personal experience if you have any, and have fun and just share more. The more information, the better.
Yeah, did you have to walk through like the process of filling out a ballot with any classes?
So similarly to Anas's video as well, in the classrooms, after we went through the slides, we did just kind of go do an overview of what the ballot would look like, and then also gave them a small, run through what the ranked choice voting is and how that works. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience before we welcome back our panelists and take questions?
I think we're ready for some questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your presentation. I want to welcome back Dan and Lia. And I've got a couple questions from the audience already waiting. I think one of the biggest ones that I've seen is, how do students become part of the student leader program? I'd love it if either of you could answer that question.
Yeah, I can take it. We're always looking for new students. So any high school students please send our way. You can contact the Youth Vote committee. So me and Grace at our email, which is youthvote.lwvsp@gmail.com. It'll be on our it's on our website. And if you for some reason can't find it, you can also reach out to the main league email, St. Paul email, and they'll be able to connect you with us. And we are planning to have a program in the spring based on, we've done this in the past, and based on Dan's experience, one thing we found that's great with the spring is that more students are eligible to vote near the end of the school year. So we're hoping to do some voter registration efforts with student leaders, taking some returning students, but also new students. We're always looking for new students. So if you would know anyone who's interested, have them email us. If they're, they can also, and we can then start the process of connecting with schools and teachers and everything. That's great. I don't know, Dan, if you had anything else to add, but. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. I finally got it. The only other strategy that we found to be effective that I'll mention is the working through the teachers. We call them teacher liaisons. And often there's a lead social studies teacher in a school that we continue to work with year after year. And they will know about us already. They've worked with us in past years. And oftentimes all we need to do is tell them, and then they can spread the word, and the students can contact us directly through the Youth Vote Committee. So oftentimes having that relationship with a teacher leader is really, really helpful for us and for outreach back to the schools.
Thank you. Also, did we mention that these students are paid?
We didn't.
I don't think we did. That is a very important thing. All of our student leaders receive $100 stipend for the work they do, and that's per semester. So for the fall programming, they'll get they have that stipend, and then if they come back for another session, whether it's in the spring or fall, they get the stipend again. And that's made possible through funds from the League of Women Voters St. Paul, but also through all those grants that Dan mentioned earlier. So we get grant money from Ramsey County, from League of Women Voters Minnesota, and League of Women Voters at the national level as well. So that makes it possible to gives these students money for all of the great work and time that they put into these projects.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know that we talked a little bit about this at our last program. So if any of you in our audience didn't see it, it is posted on our YouTube. But could any of you, and maybe Panra, you can share a little bit too, what are some of the challenges engaging high school students in voting?
Yeah, I think probably Panra can answer that as well as I can if she wants to start.
Yes, I'll say a little bit. So I know, and myself included, with the younger generation, I feel that there are challenges, but I think the best ways that we can get their attention and get more engagement is definitely through social media. And I think in addition to that, definitely enforcing it in the classrooms as well. For example, if you go to someone's story on a social media, let's say maybe Instagram, you go on someone's story and they have something shared on their story, you'll see it, and then and students have classes every week. So if they see it at home, they go to school, I feel like it'll be reinforced if we kind of like bring up the subject again. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. And the fact that you walked your classmates through the process too, and then it'll be a little bit more familiar than when they go to actually vote, and maybe they'll get something in government class or by voting with some adults and things like that too. Dan and Leah,
Yeah.
did either of you run into challenges while you were engaging with high schoolers?
Yeah, I think one of the main challenges is just that a lot of high schoolers aren't eligible yet. And so I think engaging with them about voting, something that they can't personally do, can seem hard, or what's my role in this? And so really emphasizing that the education part is important and making sure that people who are eligible to vote at their high schools know that, but that also, so by the time they are eligible, they have that knowledge. And then also talking about how you share that knowledge with the broader community, whether that's talking to parents or other adults they know. Like Dan mentioned, Anas has made videos in Somali before. And so sharing that kind of information with a broader community is really valuable and something our student leaders have been passionate about. I think also, like Dan mentioned earlier, the shift into getting the high school students to be taking the lead on these projects has been really important. We've seen a lot of like creativity come out of that. Last year with COVID, we had students doing different social media campaigns as well, interacting with their peers that way. So there are challenges, but I think we've been able to do some really great work nonetheless. And a lot of it is just because of the great students that we work with.
One thing I'll add is that research has found that one of the main barriers for people not voting and not registering is that they've never been asked, or they've never been asked in a personal way. And so that's a basis for the whole design of the program, is that by having students ask their peers to register and then actually vote as well. I mean, registering is important, but the real final goal is to actually get them to vote, and to ask them to do both is really an important strategy. And it sounds simple, but it can be very effective to have a personal ask.
Thank you so much. We have another question about sharing the projects. And so Panra, you shared it with your classmates, and I know that you mentioned that Anas shared these videos on YouTube and with his community as well. But how else are they shared? Are they available to like legislatures or people at Ramsey County? Do they get to see these projects as well?
Yeah, Dan, I don't know if you want to start by talking about like historically how that's been handled with the program in the last few years, and since you've been doing this for a bit.
Well, we've done the best we can, but I'll have to admit right at the beginning that we could do a lot more in terms of disseminating, because there's just some really, really, high quality work that is kind of sitting in the box on the shelf and not enough people are seeing it. We used to use a Basecamp webpage that the county is still providing us. And so that's one tool. But at least it provides us a warehouse of putting all of these projects where anybody can access them, as long as they have a link. Trying to find it, you can't really search on the web for it. You can't, Google in St. Paul League of Women Voters, student leader projects. It doesn't work that easily. So we're trying to figure out how to make better use of the publicly available projects. And all of the students have said yes when we've asked them if we can disseminate them through social media and other tools. But the Bugle had a nice article. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Thank you, Panra, for doing that. And that kind of news reporting is very effective. And it's frankly quite easy to write a short news release and get great coverage. So never forget about the regular news media in addition to social media, which is where most of the students really are going to be.
Yeah, I would just add that because of the way we get our grants, we're often sharing, in the past, I think we've shared projects with some of the organizations that have given us grant money, such as Ramsey County or the League of Women Voter Minnesota, I believe, when sharing the numbers and the work that our students are doing for sure as part of that grant process. And as Dan mentioned, the typical media sources as well. I know last year with the 2020 elections, there were several instances. I think we had like a radio program where some of our students were interviewed. We did have like some news articles as well, kind of just talking about the program. And but yeah, I'd agree with Dan too. There's definitely more we can be doing in terms of sharing this great work with people.
And I'll have to hand it back to Heidi and the program committee that are here tonight. The past two programs that have highlighted, now this one is really an excellent means. I only wish we had hundreds and hundreds, but it's great that it's being recorded and now will be rebroadcast by St. Paul Neighborhood Network, if I got that right, and SCC. Help me, Heidi.
Yeah, the Suburban Community Channel. Yep. Yeah, it's so great. And I know the League of Women Voters Minnesota has a program where students create projects, and they also have featured their projects on a website, including two of our former student fellows through that program have their programs featured on that as well. So thank you so much. Panra, were you able to share your project beyond Como High School, or did it stay just within Como?
So the presentation we gave did just stay in Como.
Great, that makes sense. I would love to ask both Panra and Lia, do you have plans to run for a public office one day? We'd love to be able to support, obviously nonpartisanly, but like see what we can do. Just making sure people know your information, right? When we present all of the rest of the candidate information out there.
I would say personally, that is not in my long-term plans, but I never say never, right? I've really enjoyed doing this work. I think local politics and organizing is very important. And I do plan to stay engaged in this sphere of the things, even if not on the candidate side.
That's great, thank you. Panra, any plans now, maybe in a few years?
Yeah, I have not thought about that, but same as Lia, I don't really see that for me right now, but I feel like I would kind of be like in the background supporting and helping out like backstage, yeah.
Great, well, we'll look forward to your hopefully continued work with League as well as any other future civic engagement. Speaking of support from League, what can we do as members and volunteers of local leagues to help to let our local schools know about these projects and videos? Are there ways that we can continue to share them with, like, could we share this with White Bear Lake in Roseville or Minneapolis?
Yeah, so I think definitely just talking about the program with people you know, whether that's students who might be interested in getting involved, or if you know teachers or at other schools we're not involved with, and like kind of starting to form those connections. We're always looking for ways to expand for places outside of St. Paul too. I think we've definitely in the past had conversations with other leagues about this program and about how they can establish similar structures in their own schools. And so we're always happy to sit down and have those conversations, whether it's Dan or Grace or Heidi or I, and forming those kinds of connections and support is super exciting.
Great, thank you. This is a really great question. I'm really excited to ask, and I'd love to hear from each of you. And maybe we'll start with Panra. What was the best part of the program and participation?
I think the best part was, I guess, seeing more of my peers, but like, oh, I don't know if this will make sense. It's a good way to connect with your peers, and just seeing their reactions. And I was kind of connecting to how League of Women Voters can support young voters. While we were giving our presentations, and like Lia said, I agree that just as simple as like talking about it and bringing it up definitely helps younger voters. And while giving our presentations, I did have two students who asked to see what I was doing this for, who with, and so I was like, this is pretty cool. So see, if you talk about it, it's not just you who is interested in the topic, and so if you talk about it, other people will just join and attract.
That's great. Thank you so much. Lia, do you want to share a little bit about what's been the best part of working with this program?
Yeah, for sure. I think between last year when I started with this program, I was more in the liaison role when Dan was still chair, and then taking on the chair position. I think throughout it, the highlight is always working with the students, seeing the cool projects they produce, but also like talking along the way and hearing their ideas, and energy and motivation is like very fun for me and very encouraging. I think I don't know, a lot of like rhetoric around like election time, I think, is talking about, oh, the youth aren't engaged or things like that. And I'm at college, and so I'm still surrounded by youth, but still, so it's like nice to see people who are younger than me being super excited and then doing things with that excitement and engagement and trying to spread it. It's super fun to see from at all stages.
That's great. Thank you.
If I can just echo what Lia just said, that's entirely my number one is the to see the excellence shine, because these are really top-notch students, by the way, and it doesn't take much, and they're on their own, and you can just step back and just watch, and it's so much fun to see how well they do, how much they embrace this. But second of all, in St. Paul, we have such rich diversity, and especially when we did the census project, we had a special focus on getting to English as second language communities, and it was really fun because the rich diversity just came out and blossomed, and so it was satisfying in that regard, because we really need to make that outreach, and they're helping us do that and doing it for us in a way.
Yeah, I think part of what I love about working with the Youth Vote too is the relationship building, not only with the students and learning about how they're engaging. I used to be a teacher, so I feel like sometimes I miss the interactions like that where you start to learn about them. But I also love building the relationships with the teachers and the adults that support them as well at the schools, and making sure that we can maintain those. And it kind of makes St. Paul, you know, we've got this big city with a large population, but it kind of makes it feel like it's not that big. You start seeing the interactions of all across, and it's kind of this little small world. I know for a fact that we have one of our former teacher liaisons here tonight, Pam. So welcome, Pam. Just want to give a shout out to that as well.
Joanne is here.
Oh yeah, Joanne's here too.
Yes. And Sharon is here as a liaison with one of the, is it McAllister or St. Catherine's? I can't remember, but in any case, Sharon.
Yep.
So there's some Gail Brand is here. So we've got several of our liaisons attending, and so just a shout out to to all of the folks that have helped make this program successful.
We got lots of good leaders. Back to a little bit more logistics. Did you see this year when you were talking with students, both the student leaders and Panra when you were in the classroom, did you see any difficulties with ranked choice voting, or was that kind of easier to explain?
I think it was pretty easy to pretty easy to explain, and the students were understanding it.
That's good.
Yeah,
I think they did also appreciate the little example we gave them too, so that helped.
Yeah, it's good to practice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think when we did our training when we started speaking with our student leaders, that's definitely something we talk about as worth including in the projects and worth talking about, since that kind of is a novel idea or it sounds confusing at first glance. But I think, talking through it, it's, they were able to take it and digest it and explain it in a way that for their peers.
That's great. We'll have to do it again in 4 years when we do it again for mayor. Do any of your student leaders hear concerns from students about the security of the vote? Anas had mentioned that, I know there was talk about that around the census, but do you hear any of that about voting with your students?
I haven't personally heard that feedback from the student leaders. Again, I've only been involved with the project since 2020, so we've been in COVID, and so I haven't personally been going into the schools. So I don't know if I could speak to the general concerns, but that's not something that's been raised to my attention. I don't know, Dan, if you've heard it, or Panra actually been doing the presentations.
Panra, have you heard anything?
Yeah, nope, I do not think I have either.
No, it's I think reality rules in the schools.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple more questions, but I really wanted to make sure I asked this one. So take your time answering if you would like. But could you talk a little bit about the impact of the student leader program? We did have somebody ask too about the transition from adult presentations to youth-led presentations. So Dan, if you could talk a little bit about how that's had an impact on that, and yeah, just talk a little bit about what it means to you, the impact, and then what you think it means to high school students as well in St. Paul.
Well, I think that the student leaders themselves have benefited from this, and I think that their peers have benefited. So I think that there's been an impact on the league in terms of the amount of work it takes and coordinating and organizing. Lia can speak to this, but in some senses, it's based on those relationships you talked about. So it's a little bit easier if you're continuing to plan each year, not just every other year or in presidentials, but do it each year, because in St. Paul, we have elections every year. I only hope that the students are more effective in reaching their peers, but I've sat at so many registration tables trying to attract students to come register, and with no luck, I feel like I'm, but I have a student with me, and they're, boom, all of a sudden they're attracting all their friends and peers and come on over and register. The excitement that the students bring to their fellow students is unmatched. And so it's a different means of outreach, but it's multi-level and multi-layered. So it takes more work that way and more training, but very rewarding, I think.
Yeah, I think in terms of impact, there's definitely the aspect of getting students registered and educated. I think like the impact that the students' projects have on their schools is definitely a huge component. But I think the other big part of the impact of the program that I didn't fully appreciate until I was actually working closely with students was the impact on the student leaders. I think, and hopefully this is true for Panra, but I think one of the great things about the program is being able to provide motivated students with a platform and like the tools to do this, and really giving them the reins, but allowing them a chance to channel that energy. I think, you know, as someone not far out from high school myself, there's definitely a gap between being interested in doing this kind of work and then actually being able to do it. And it can kind of be daunting to bridge that gap. And so I think the impact that this program can have in encouraging students to be involved in this kind of work, and hopefully shows them why it's important and gives them the motivation to continue staying engaged, is just a huge part of this program that I didn't fully appreciate until after working on it. So yes, it's important to get those numbers in terms of how many people are re-registering, but I think the like core value of the program is often in the like individual students that we're working closely with.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Panra, you mentioned at the beginning too that about why you got involved, and do you feel like this has achieved some of your goals? I mean, I think you're doing great at public speaking, so I feel like you can check that one off if you want. But how do you feel about it? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, thank you. But yeah, I agree with both what Dan and Leah were saying. And while presenting too, I think it was really cool to see that my peers were listening to me and my other two student leaders give our presentation. And I could see them engaging. I could see them listening, eye contact and all. But also adding on to that, as a student leader, and hopefully I am making this impact too. I can see that they're listening, and I feel because I'm presenting to my peers who are all teenagers, so we are in the same age group, then I feel like I have definitely a way to reach and grab their attention, especially since me and my group, we gave this presentation during classes. So it's kind of like a small switch in topic. And so because we gave our presentations in the history classes, it's not just the students sitting the full time 40 minutes on learning history. So we I feel like we give them time to think about this awesome opportunity that they will have when they're adults. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
great. Thank you so
That's
much.
great.
I want to, we have had a couple questions come in about social media. And so I wanted to see if there were any other thoughts or things that you wanted to share about sharing candidate information on social media or voting information, and also how to share some of our information. Somebody mentioned that our candidate forums are often very long. They're an hour and a half. Are people going to watch all of that? Are new voters going to be watching all of that? And just some thoughts on how to make sure this information is available and accessible for our young students, our young learners, our young voters. They're not all students sometimes when they graduate high school. So yeah, how can we utilize social media and make some of these long format things more accessible for our younger voters?
Yeah, last year we had a couple students do projects centered on social media. So one student took information from candidate forums, but also from like the league flyers and voter information packets, and breaking that down and putting it on her Instagram and summarizing things in a few quick sentences. And I know in Nora and Iris's presentation, I wasn't able to show all of their slides, but they had slides with short summaries of that kind of what are the like key points that are highlighted either on the candidate's website or from forums they've done or interviews. And I think that is important because yes, the forums can get long. And so it somewhat comes down to the students and what kind of projects they want to make. We try to let them have a decent amount of discretion. So if they're interested in doing social media outreach, we encourage that, but we also don't require or expect that. But I think it's just another avenue there's value in both the school and the online, I would say.
Dan or Panra, do you have thoughts on that as well that you'd like to share?
Well, I'll tell you that during COVID, social media and electronic forums, other forums, was the only thing we had. So now that we're somewhat post-COVID, keep our fingers crossed, and that the students are in person, in the classroom, there's nothing like that eye contact that Panra was talking about. Being in front of the classroom with the 3 student leaders, with the students engaged, you can't get that with just social media alone. So I say yes, social media as a secondary strategy to get to that point, but it's the the personal in person that I think is the cat's meow, and everything else is secondary. But I'm a boomer and I'm biased that way.
It's worked, right? Well, Panra, did you have any thoughts anymore?
No, I think Leah and Dan answered.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Before I thank our audience and everybody, do the 3 of you have any final thoughts or things that you wanted to share about the program with our audience tonight?
I guess just if anyone has follow-up questions, I know there's a lot we weren't able to get to. Definitely feel free to email me and Grace at youthvote.lwvsp@gmail.com. And I know, and also just generally supporting the League of Women Voters St. Paul goes a long way. So that's just all I would say.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much to Dan and Lia and Panra for your presentations and answering questions. We learned so much, and I appreciate your time tonight, as well as your time with this program in the past. Thank you to the League of Women Voters St. Paul Program Committee. There's lots of work happening behind the scenes, so we really appreciate the work that you put in for practicing, and then tonight's program as well. We'd also like to thank SCC and SPNN for broadcasting this program on their channels. Thank you so much. And then one final thank you to our attendees. Thank you for joining tonight and for all of your great questions. We appreciate your continued support of the League of Women Voters St. Paul programs. Just as a reminder, today is Giving Tuesday, and we are so grateful for your financial contributions this past month with Give to the Max Day, the annual appeal letter, and then today on Giving Tuesday. Your support helps us continue programs like this, as well as our student leader programs. So thank you so much for that. After this program, a survey will pop up, so please complete that, as we always reflect on your feedback for future program topic ideas and other ways to improve. And we hope to see you in January. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time tonight, and it was so great to learn with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.